Back in late 2018, a new Dragon Ball game was revealed, named Dragon Ball Game Project Z Action RPG. Thankfully, that was only a working title, which became Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. There has been countless attempts to retell Goku's story in video game form, but Kakarot seems like the perfect combination of DBZ lore, storytelling, role-playing, and of course action. So much action. I've been looking into this take on Dragon Ball Z, and I'm so enthused about it, I had to put everything down I've learned into a list in a YouTube video. So write in the comments what year you first encountered Dragon Ball Z, and if you're ready, here's 20 things you should know about Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. We'll kick off with the more obvious things and we'll work towards the more secretive aspects you should know. First of all, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is an RPG. Don't get me wrong, it has plenty of fighting, but at its core, it's about learning the world you live in, travelling by vehicle or flying to each destination, talking to other characters and NPCs, and reliving everything from the anime. I feel this is important as many gamers, especially those new to Dragon Ball, want to try every game which releases, but fighting games, even the best ones, can be a little daunting. With an action RPG, this version of Dragon Ball Z is the most accessible to date. So keep in mind, RPG first, fighting game second. Or in other words, we'll be underpowered in the early game and slowly learn new skills, working your ass off to improve before becoming an unstoppable juggernaut in the late game. Continuing from this point, the core story told in Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is completely canon, a faithful retelling of events from the anime, from the Saiyan saga through to the start of Oob's adventure and everything in between. But get this, the developers have added a few extra things, such as additional content and context to every event to enrich the lore. Maybe we'll see something from another character's perspective, maybe an additional line of dialogue which better explains events. Those who've been lucky enough to play the game thus far have been shouting from the rooftops about the depth of the storytelling content available here. As an addition to the core plot, like every other great RPG you've played, side quests are here to add context and a little catharsis to proceedings. The plot points from the anime which detract from the main story have been hidden away in plain sight via character interactions in the game. But once again, there's a curveball which hardcore DBZ fans should know about: non-canon missions. As we are in a fully fleshed out world, it's impossible to add everything intended by writer Akira Toriyama. This is where there is a distinct disconnect between the core story and many side quests. Simply put, some of the side quests have been invented especially for the game. For example, there's a way to fish here. And how do we do it? With Goku's tail? If I remember rightly, it was cut off permanently. But luckily, he keeps it inside his jersey to bring out whenever he wants to fish. Okay, it's a bit strange, but stick with it. It's not exactly canon, but it's a great way to reintroduce elements from the series which don't really play an important part anymore. Because this is an open world to some degree and time passes within the game, it is possible to meet some characters earlier than first suggested in the manga. This will introduce backstories to characters as you see what they were like through sub-quests. Again, keep in mind that these are not necessarily canon, but added backstories which should help us understand their choices later in the story. I've used the term open world a couple of times already. When asked if the world is fully open, the devs gave a yes/no answer. So to help clarify this, the world is indeed separated into huge sections, huge zones and planet regions, which are not all sewn together. You can't walk from A to Z dynamically. To access many of these, Goku needs to fly straight up into the air and far enough away to look down upon the world. He can then choose a region he wishes to land in. So see this as a useful fast travel option. So what can we expect from these open world elements when outside of key battles? Well, you can expect fishing, training, hunting, training, eating, training, exploring, training. You get the idea. The world is filled with different beings to fight, like these dragon-like creatures which inhabit most places, in the early game at least. The eating mechanic is not for survival purposes. You won't be forced to dramatically change how you play to monitor your calorie intake. Instead, meals offer temporary buffs such as flying speed, healing rate, and attack powers. The hunting element is the most key here as it unlocks additional abilities, and exploration is pivotal to finding those side quests which unlock more character upgrades. Both in the story section of the game and in the open world elements, many tasks have been designed with one-off mini-games to mimic the anime as closely as possible, while still incorporating video game mechanics. For example, when Goku and Piccolo go for their driving licenses, there's a mini-game especially for it. Another example is when playing baseball. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is going for a home run with the RPG elements in this game, deep and varied throughout. At this point, we all already know that we're playing as legendary hero Goku throughout the entirety of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Well, think again, because other playable characters have been confirmed, and they each have unique skills. The confirmed playable characters so far are Goku's son Gohan, fierce rival / best friend Piccolo, and legendary Saiyan Vegeta. Gohan is all about short-range flurries of combat. Hand-to-hand fighting is his thing, but he also has those moves you'd expect, like Masenko. Gohan's real dad, Piccolo, is defensively buffed and has a huge pool of health, and is all set with his explosive wave, which produces an area of effect damage bubble, great for taking down large groups of foes. Vegeta is more focused towards ki blasts and ranged combat, but he can get in there and fight on the inside too if he needs to, but the others are better suited to that. So there's an element of tactics to the characters you choose. Here's something very cool to know, not all quests found in the open world can be accessed by Goku. Missions will be hidden away that only certain playable characters can attain. How cool is that? So keep your eyes open in game, a quick character swap could open up another storyline and more precious RPG goodness. In addition to this, Goku is able to take support characters with him, up to 2 to be precise, and just as we saw with the playable characters, each supporting character has unique skills in battle. For example, Krillin is able to use Solar Flare to blind enemies, allowing Goku to run up and start a combo uncontested. Yamcha has a way to restrict enemy movement via his Spirit Ball. He can also gain aggro from enemies, which could help if you find yourself near death. Chaozu has telekinesis to restrain enemies, Tien is another with a solar flare, but he also has a tri-beam for straight up damage. The skill is to choose the right duo to take into the right fight, because of the next key point. Those characters will actually think for themselves when in battle. Think of them as autonomous or AI controlled, but no, they are constantly learning how you fight to improve their own reactions in battle. The devs aren't giving us everything right away and holding back on support and playable characters, but have suggested more can be added in updates and DLC if the community want that. If the name doesn't give it away already, the Dragon Balls can be found and collected in-game, which in turn summons Sharon. From here, using our wishes, we can actually will a fallen enemy back to life. Basically, we can fight an enemy for a second time, but with new conditions and much more difficult. Beating these bosses will reward Goku with items and skills, which will make his journey a little easier. This aspect brings in replayability and good old what-if scenarios with additional dialogue from each of the characters. And speaking of dialogue, do you prefer Dragon Ball Z Kakarot or Dragon Ball Z Kakarot? If it's the latter, you should know from minute 1 the audio can be switched to Japanese, making the world feel even more authentic. There are many original voice actors returning, which makes this option unmissable for the hardcore fans. I sadly cannot read subtitles quick enough here, so I'll stick with good old English. There's an unwritten rule when Dragon Ball Z games are made. A new character must be designed. This time around, Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama has returned to the franchise to introduce a brand new character, especially for Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. We'll soon meet Bonyu, who looks like a thick girl, so I'm all up for this. Formerly one of the Ginyu Force, this beaut will appear in a short training mission which can be opened early if you pre-order the game. Ultimately, this will make the game a little easier, as you'll have an ability far before you should obtain that in the game naturally. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Well, we've started looking down pre-order bonuses, so let's jump in with both feet into versions of the game. In addition to the standard edition, we have the collector's deluxe and ultimate editions to choose from. The deluxe version includes a cooking item which awards permanent ki attack and HP boosts, and the season pass which will add 2 more original stories and 1 new canon story later in the game's life cycle. The ultimate edition has all of that, plus a music pack of 11 freaking awesome anime tracks to get your groove onto, and the Tao Pai Pai pillar from spring 2020. Interesting. The collector's edition includes a freaking diorama, a steelbook of the world, those expansions we talked about, and the obligatory art book. Tough choices to be made here. Which version are you going for? And while we're speaking of versions of the game, we should note that there is no plans to make a Nintendo Switch version. I know, I'm gutted too. DBZ on the go could have been epic. At launch, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot releases on PS4, Xbox One and PC on January 17th, which so happens to be my birthday. Whoop whoop, whoop whoop. Expect enhanced versions for the PS4 Pro and Xbox One, but alas, those details are yet to be shared as I'm writing this. So there we have it, 20 things you should know about Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Until 1 week ago, I was completely new to this franchise, but I've quickly grown to understand why it's such a long-running cultural phenomenon. I'm looking forward to playing through the events of Dragon Ball Z. What about you? I'd love to know your thoughts. I'm Adam from PlayStation Grenade. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you next time.
It's over 9,000!
What, 9,000?